It's time to unhaul some books. So around me I have a few piles of books. So the first piles is the books I've read and don't want to keep. One pile of books that I've DNF'd, so that's why I don't want to keep them. And a pile of books that I've lost interest in. So I'm gonna start with the books I DNF'd. Here's the stack. So the first one I have is Love Me Do by Lindsay Kelk. It's a romance I picked up last year in the summer, and it's about a woman, moving to California in Hollywood, and she falls in love with her neighbor. And it was so cliche and very predictable, so I just didn't want to finish it. I feel like I was in maybe 100 to 150 pages in this book, but yeah, I lost interest. And I DNF'd it. This one, I think I DNF'd much quicker. It's Meet Me in Ivy Falls by Amy True. It's a small-town romance between two people who wants to buy a house, but not together, so they're kind of in a fight and they do a compromise. I think I didn't like the writing, and again, very predictable. I know romance is predictable, but sometimes it's just too, I know it's gonna end, I know what the third act conflict is gonna be, so I DNF'd it. This one, I DNF'd it last week actually. It's Fangirl Done by Tessa Bailey. It's about a girl, I should stop saying girl. It's about a woman who becomes a caddy to this golfer, and she is his super fan, and it became very sexual for no apparent reason. The situation is like, is her boss, she's his employee, and I didn't really like it, and she talked too much about his butt, and I know there's a scene inside this book when she does stuff to his butt. Not shaming at all, but when I read the reviews, people are like, what the fuck? And yeah, I think I read, again, 100 pages, and I was bored, so I DNF'd it. And she felt very juvenile, and since there's already a dynamic of boss employee, I didn't like the fact that she was acting very young. So yeah, DNF'd it. This one, The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, I DNF'd because, like I said in my TBR video, I have a really hard time to get on board with sci-fi, and I really want to like this book. I really want to enjoy sci-fi, but I just don't. So I wanted to try it, and I tried really hard, but it's not my thing. This one is kind of a bummer because I DNF'd it like 4 days ago, and it's gonna appear in my next haul video because I hauled this book last week. It's The Adventures of Amina Al-Serafi by Shannon Chakraborty. It's about a female pirate who goes on a quest because somebody is paying her a lot of money to do this quest, and she's like a retired pirate. I think in this one I was like 150 pages in, but it was too long. I didn't really understand I didn't really like also the writing, so yeah, it's a no for me. This one, like the other romance on this stack, I DNF'd because it was too heavy-handed and too predictable, and it's Fierce at Heart by Zoe York. It's about a guy who meets up again with an old co-worker or like a trainee because he's a firefighter, and then the next day he's already in love, and I'm like, whoa, okay. And I don't like insta love, so it's a DNF for me. This one, Never Desire a Duke by Lily Dalton. I DNF'd it because it was way too long. I don't know how much pages, like 380 pages, but written really small. And for a romance, that's a lot. It was in a small town, they were snowed in, so there wasn't a lot to do in the book because it's snowing and it's an historical romances, so not a lot you can do at that time. And it was on and on again. It's about a married couple, but the husband decided not to pursue a relationship with his wife, and now he regrets it. So he tries to win her over again, but yeah, DNF'd it. This one, Supplicant by Sarah Simon. She's kind of like a 50-50 author for me, and this one was completely a no. It's a novella, it's very short, and I DNF'd it. So much sex, for no context. And in this one, it's about a woman who's been left at the altar by her fiance. And his reasons were really crap, and you learn about them at the end. I read a review to know what was the reason. Very stupid reason. And then they reconnect and immediately sex. No, thank you. And this one is Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. I read To Kill a Kingdom by her. I don't know if I read any other, but I saw it when I was in the charity shops in Scotland almost a year ago, and I was like, yeah, I'm interested to read it. And then I tried to read it, and it was reading way too young for me. I know I don't read a lot of YA, and this is an example of why. So that concludes the stacks of DNF. Now for the books I have lost interest in. So most of the time I've had them on my TBR for more than a year, and my tastes have changed, or just my interest waned. So yeah, I have a few of them. I have Those Redrown by Amy Goldsmith. I know this one is about a woman who's been asked to join a trip or like a cruise or something, and the person she's replacing on the trip has gone missing, and nobody is caring for that, and it's like some kind of mystery. I just lost interest in it. This one is like when you go to a bookstore and you find a book, you're like, oh yeah, it's a few euros, I could read that. And then you never do. It's Goddess of the Sea by Piscicast. So I think each book is about some type of god or goddesses. And I think it's been written in like 2004. No, 2003. I was 6 years old at the time. And I was like, oh, it could be cool to read something from that time, but now I'm like, no, not interested. Then I have Children of Vice by J.J. McAvoy. It's a romance mafia, and I bought it like almost 2 years ago. At that time, I think like most people, we read a lot of mafia romances, and at some point all of them kind of mesh each other. And this one is like a marriage of convenience, and I think I read enough marriage of convenience in a mafia setting, and I don't need to read this one. Then this one is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I know this one is a cult classic, and I think it was published like maybe 10 years ago, and it kind of had a resurgence in 2016. It kind of had a resurgence the past few years. It's about a guy who doesn't speak or just selectively mute. I don't know because I haven't read the book. And about a woman who comes to a small town and she falls in love with him. I don't know why. I think it's a bit too heavy for me to read. It's not like a triggering kind of topic, but I want something a bit more light in my romances at the moment, and so I never felt the urge to pick this book and read it. This one is Keeping Him by Kelly D. Fox, with a lot of abs. This one is about a rancher in a small town, and she's a woman, and she's sassy and outgoing. Again, it's a bit too long for me. I think it's almost 500 pages for a romance. And if it's 500 pages plus for a fantasy or fantasy romance, no problem. But if it's a romance, how much do you have to say about it? So yeah, I lost interest in it. And also because I already read a lot of small town romances or rancher romances, and I feel like I'm kind of burnt out on the topic, because how much can you say that's original about this kind of books? Ouais, voilà. So the next one is Captain by Lauren Ho. I know I lost interest in this one because I tried to read Ballpeen Hammer by her. I think it's in the same series, and the writing and the dialogues were too cringy because they were talking like with emojis, but like in real life, and it was, I don't know, it felt like very not realistic for how people talk, and so yeah, I never felt the urge to pick this up. Same with Men by Shell Bliss. I think it's like a second chance romance about a woman who left town when she was still a teenager, and then she came back and the guy she loved is like, no, you betrayed me, blah blah blah. Don't care anymore. Then I have Twisted by Emily McIntyre. I read Scarred by her. And I was like, yeah. I never watched Disney movies, so I know the stories, like the baseline of the stories. But yeah, I never watched any movies, Disney movies. So I don't feel attached to this kind of retellings. And the last one in the lost interest pile is Fire Inside by Kristen Ashley. It's like a MC romance. I didn't try reading this kind of MC, but I feel like it's not my kind of romance genre because it's too rooted in sexism and misogyny, and the treatment of women is not that great. And now, for the books I've read, but I don't want to keep, I have a lot more. So the next one I have is Stealing Tranquility by G.L. Whale. Weird story, but I find this book in the children's section of my second-hand bookstore. It's not a children's book because it's a waitress romance. So it's a dragon shifter romance, and they're like, oh, I touched this girl because I think she's 19. I touch her, and I know she's my mate, and another guy is touching her. Not sexually, just touching her. And he's like, oh, she's also my mate. And I think at the end of the book, the last guy haven't touched her, and they're like in another kingdom, and the beginning of the story starts in our world. I didn't continue the series because I didn't really feel interested in it. Next, I have two editions of the same book. I have Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I read this copy a few years ago, and one thing about me is I keep only the books I want to reread on my bookshelf. So this one was there. And then a few months ago, I found this copy. And I was like, if I reread the book and I still want to keep a copy on my bookshelf, I would much prefer keeping this one. But it's my first read of 2025 and it's my first reread of 2025. And I decided to not keep this book on the shelf. So that's why I'm getting rid of two editions. And yet again, I don't really care because I only paid a few euros for each one. So yeah, bye bye. Then I have a lot of historical romances. So I'm just gonna go quickly through them. So I have this pile. I have Never Resist Temptation by Miranda Neville. I have Yours Truly, The Duke by Amelia Gray. Sunrise with the Notorious Lord by Alexandra Hawkins. I have Scoundrel of My Heart by Lauren Heath. It's a reread for me, but I didn't feel the need to keep it on my shelf. I have The Duke's Stolen Bride by Sophie Jordan. I have A Duchess by Midnight by Caris Michaels. I have The Marriage Lesson by Victoria Alexander. And then I have also a few. And then that's it for historical romances. I have The Ghost by Monica McCarthy. I think this one actually I didn't read it. It's just, I love historical romances, but I don't like Highlander historical romances, and this one is an Highlander romance, so no. I have Her Highness and the Highlander by Tracy Ann Wan. I know this one is a Highlander, but it was like a clash of social class, so I really liked it, but I didn't feel the need to keep it. I have The Bed and the Bachelor by Tracy Ann Wan. Didn't realize it was the same author, just realized now. This is the step up. I have Silk is for Seduction by Loretta Chase. What the Wildflower Wants by Maria Rodal. Of a Proper Governess by Kathy Maxwell. And the last historical romance I have is How to Steal a Scoundrel's Heart by Vivienne Lorette, with a very, very badly photoshopped little dog on the cover. So I have Paint Me Perfect by Kay Cove. It was just an okay romance. I have That Kind of Guy by Stephanie Archer. I know in my last video, the Come Book Shopping With Me, I talked about reading this series, and I much prefer, I think it's the fourth one in the series, this one is the first. It's fake dating, I don't really like fake dating, and I didn't really like the story or the execution, so yeah. I have A Long Time Coming by Megan Quinn. This one is a romance between two best friends, a guy and a girl. And I'm kind of a hard sell on best friends to lovers, especially if they are guys and girls, because I have best friends who are guys and I would like to have some representation of just healthy friendships between the two gender without any ambiguity. I like this book, but I thought it was a bit quick because she's engaged to someone else, and then the best friend is like, no, she's the woman of my dream actually, and then she breaks off her engagement, and they fall in love like 2 weeks later, if even that. So yeah, it's a bit quick, but oh well. I have All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This one I read like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was on my shelf, my bookshelves of rereads, but I decided to unhaul it and not reread it because I don't feel like I would have the same feelings if I reread it. And yeah, I don't really know how I feel about Colleen Hoover and her books, and I thought at the time this one really resonated with me, but I don't think it would be the case now. I have The Vicious Circle by Catherine St. John. This one is in a cult book, and again, I feel like cult books, there's so much you can say about being in a cult. It's a fiction, not non-fiction. But in a fiction book, I feel like you can say so much and then it's kind of repetitive. And it was the case of this one. I read it, it was okay. And then I have If I Only Knew by Kevin Michaels. This one is between a grieving mother and like her boss or the assistant of the boss, but he's also the CEO of the company or something like that. Very quick read. They fall very quickly in love, especially since she's grieving. So yeah, not really memorable. And the last book I've had it also on my bookshelf for a few years, but I decided not to reread it because I much prefer to keep the memory of reading it once than reading it again and my feelings having totally changed. It's The Gentleman's Guide to Vice Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. So yeah, I decided to not read this one because I don't read YA anymore. At the time I thought it was a really fun book, but I don't feel the need to pick it up. And the last book I have is in its own pile because I'm still reading it. I hope to finish it today, but it's The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson. I know I'm gonna unhaul it because it's like 380 pages, but it feels so long and nothing really happens. And I feel like it's always the same for me when I read her books. So maybe she's not really an author for me, but yet again, I want to like her books. So yeah, that's the last book I have that I'm gonna unhaul when I finish it. So that's all the books, and now, just for fun, let's count all of them. So in total, I have 43 books I'm unhauling. I'm very glad because most of them have already sold on my Vinted, so now I need to package them up. I think of all of them, I only have like 17 left on my page on Vinted, so I'm quite happy. More money to buy more books. And if you're interested to check my Vinted, I'll leave the link in the description. But yeah, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!